Historians of political economy have long debated the question, what happened to the French economy in the 19th century? Remember that in the 18th century, in 18th century France, the country was the most powerful economic power in the world. Its influence built around the mercantilist policies which had been established earlier in the 17th century, policies that included domestic mining and some industry. Indeed, it was the growing power of the emergent bourgeoisie, business and tradesmen and practitioners of emergent capitalism, that helped to legitimize the French Revolution. But the administrations after the French Revolution further developed the centralized authority of the state. During the 19th century, it was first Great Britain, and then towards the end of the century, Germany, that emerged as powers whose influence was built on a great expansion of industry in the private sector outside of government. Britain's great authority as a colonial power emerged during this period in the 19th century. The German Empire in the late 19th century and into the 20th century was built on new basic industries that emerged at the end of that 19th century. Meanwhile, France was experiencing a private sector economy that for our purposes had basically two key features. First, because the state was the highest prestige site for employment, since it was there one could contribute directly to increased social order and hence progress, there wasn't a national push or even a national legitimation for an autonomous, a freestanding sector for private industrial enterprise. Rather, as the historian Ken Alder has argued, the state contributed to the private sector economy in a more direct way as a big customer. One can understand how working in a private sector arena that contributed to the state might be seen as a reasonably legitimate activity. If you can't be in the state, at least contribute to its activities and through it to social progress. One can also see how this state, the state influence, might shape the content and character then of French technology, placing greatest emphasis upon military technologies and on the construction of a national technological infrastructure for increasing order inside the country. What better way to further social order than through a variety of transportation, communication, and energy technologies? The Department of Bridges and Roads, for example, was doing just that, coordinating development of a national transportation system. During the 19th century, the French built an excellent railroad system. They contributed heavily to the development of electrical technologies and the construction of a French electric power network. Even to this day, the French are known for aircraft technologies, for example Airbus, which is the one company in the world that competes effectively with Boeing. The French contributed to the supersonic transport, the Concorde, despite the fact that it lost money every time that it flew. It was important symbolically for the French national government. The French Minitel system was an early version of what would emerge as the Internet. There was great national interest in the Channel project, for example, building a tunnel under the English Channel. And perhaps, maybe you've had a chance yourself to ride on the French high-speed train, the TGV, the train de grande vitesse, the train with great speed. I myself first rode on the TGV, not really realizing what I was doing. I had been in Paris and was on my way south to Lyon. And in looking at the schedule board in the train station, I noticed that there was one train that would get me there a few hours ahead of this other one. So I figured, well, it's probably an express rather than a local. Maybe it doesn't have any stops along the way. And although it cost a little bit extra, I figured, hey, what the heck? I'll get there faster. So I got on the train, sat down in my seat, and began working. I was in a little bit of a hurry, and I had some work to do. So as the train started out, I was sitting there reading and doing a little writing. After a little while, I took a break. I casually looked up and glanced at the utility poles going by. And it gradually dawned on me that the utility poles, are going by really fast. I mean, so fast that these utility poles are something of a blur. You know, utility pole, pole, whoa. And I realized, my goodness, we're really cooking here. Look at these poles go by. I'd never seen anything like that before. I mean, wow, we're really going fast. The next feeling is I'm starting to get a little nervous. So I jumped up out of my seat and I run up to the club car. You know, the club car is where they serve drinks. So I order a drink, and I'm standing there watching these utility poles go by. And then it dawns on me, you know, I'm standing there. I'm standing comfortably in this train. We're really cooking. How fast are we going, by the way? I ask around, and I finally figure out that we're going somewhere in the neighborhood of 160 miles an hour. Very comfortably. The drink in my hand isn't moving. Well, after a drink or two, I kind of settled back and just tried to enjoy it. At the same time, I did carry these images of catastrophic accidents in a train going 160 miles an hour. But why worry about it? The TGV. The TGV is, for me, an achievement of French-style engineering, an achievement of industry stimulated and directed by the French state, all in the name of social order. The second key feature of the French private sector economy is that, to this day, it is built principally around food. Food is still the leading area of manufacturing. France is, of course, the world's leader in wine production. 35% of the land in France consists of fields and orchards and vineyards. The main marine catch, by the way, is perhaps not surprisingly oysters. French commerce is still built on a preponderance of small shops. Note that despite the fact that iron ore deposits in France are among the richest in the world, and the country also has high-quality bituminous coal, but the country has never developed a large steel industry. Building industry was not the key to French progress. Building social order was and is. Accordingly, in contrast with the United States, the French didn't develop a commitment in industry to experimental science. As Chronakis puts it, quote, France and the United States evolved distinct technological traditions in the 19th century. Both fostered a scientific approach to technology. But the paths they took toward this goal were different. The French devoted much attention to mathematical and engineering theory, but tended to ignore experimental, industrial research. In contrast, the Americans devoted much attention to experimental industrial research, but tended to avoid theory. End quote. In the United States, in the late 19th and early 20th century, dozens of firms and institutions were carrying out industrial research and testing. In contrast, the historian Terry Shin analyzed the research activities of 34 French firms during this period and found that only 6 had industrial research centers. My theme here is thus that the state was interested in industry only to the extent that it can contribute to French progress or social order through the state. The state did not cast its spotlight directly onto industry or onto the direct sponsorship and direction, let's say, of industry until after World War II.